Coming next, the Ruckus Society. They're training people to disrupt American society. You saw it in Seattle. We'll find out why they're doing what they're doing when we come back. In the Impact segment tonight, the Ruckus Society. That organization is training dissidents in the skills of nonviolent civil disobedience to help bring attention to environmental and human rights groups. Ruckus was involved in the Seattle WTO protest, which unfortunately did turn violent, and in the IMF protest in Washington. With us now is the media trainer for Ruckus, Celia Alario. So basically tell me what you're trying to do.
Sure, absolutely. Well, at the Ruckus Society, what we're hoping to do is empower communities of all sorts, whether it's a small group of grandmothers trying to stop a toxic waste incinerator in their community, or a group of people in British Columbia who want to keep the old-growth forest standing, or people like in the protest that you've mentioned who are taking on what we call the unholy trinity, the World Trade Organization, the World Bank, and the IMF, trying to strike at the very heart of corporate globalization. We give them the skills they need to safely and non-violently capture the media's eye and the hearts and minds of people trying to change. That's the history and the practice of nonviolence, because we're moving in a trajectory here that was started by Gandhi, Martin Luther King, folks that sat in the lunch counters.
You teach them how to do sit-ins and things like that?
Whether it's puppet making, sit-ins, blockading. We also have some high-tech types of actions. We show people how to climb trees or buildings or bridges to hang banners, or to put themselves between the whale and the harpoon, or between the bulldozer and the intact wilderness area. We train them in media skills, how to get their message out through the media, because as you know, the court of public opinion is where a lot of this gets played out.
Now, we're looking into the Seattle situation with the WTO. Were you disappointed in how that came out?
Not at all. I mean, let's face it, on November 29th, most Americans, definitely my dad, had no idea who the World Trade Organization were, or the impact that organization, in secret, behind closed doors, in a very undemocratic way, mind you, was having on their lives.
What about all the violence, though? That you say you're nonviolent, you're not disappointed in all the violence that happened in Seattle?
Well, you know,
all the property damage and things like that?
Well, we need to draw a distinction between the two. There's violence, and then there's property damage. For me, violence is perpetrated against living things.
Property violence isn't violence.
No,
so somebody throwing a garbage pail through a plate glass window of a small business, that's not a violent act?
No. In my mind, violence is perpetrated against people.
So violence against property is...
Property damage is a different thing.
It's not violence. Now, do you encourage that?
No, absolutely not.
But you're not disappointed when you see it?
I'm not disappointed in the protests in Seattle at all.
At all.
And what's important to remember is you had people coming together from very different walks of life. There were right-wing fiscal conservatives marching next to union members, environmental activists,
what about the
social justice activists.
The policemen and women who got hurt in Seattle? You disappointed they got hurt?
You know what? I actually think that if the police had been smart, whether it was protester or a policeman, there wouldn't have been injuries.
So you're not disappointed they got hurt?
They completely overreacted. I'm disappointed when anyone gets hurt, because I'm a nonviolent person.
Allowed people to throw garbage pails through plate glass windows and ruin businesses? They shouldn't have stopped that?
Well, here's what I think. If you want to talk to the Ruckus Society, talk to me about the skills that we train in. We don't train people to throw things through windows. We train people to do very, very powerful, poignant actions with a very important message that's creatively and with impact delivered to the public.
Ms. Alario, your message here to the American people is you weren't disappointed in the property damage that took place in Seattle. You weren't disappointed that some policeman got hurt because you feel it was their fault. That message comes out loud and clear in the way you answer my questions. And I think, quite personally, that is offensive to me, and that is destructive for the organizations that you're trying to help.
Well, actually, you misinterpreted my answers to both. You asked me if I was pleased with the protests themselves, and I very, very much am. But what we're trying to strike at with the protests that we do and the groups that we help to empower with the skills we train in is destruction. Destruction of our water and our air, which we would like to see pure for our children. Destruction of people's lifestyles. You know, what we're looking for is for everyone to have a just life, a certain level of dignity for the workers, people all around the world.
Would you say that you're
together with them, and that's what we're about.
In theory, that sounds good, but it never in the history of humankind has that been able to be achieved, because human nature, by its very nature, is weak. And, you know, and Well, look, I can't get an argument of idealism.
Because we only have 7 minutes together, so let's not talk about human nature.
Let's zero in on what your political leanings are. Are you a socialist organization? Do you believe that all workers should be paid the same and everybody should have the same kind of salary and
Well, I think
benefits?
you said it right a moment ago, Bill, when you talked about the fact that nothing's ever played out. No ist-or-ism, which of course are theoretical and studied by armchair people who sit in academic institutions, has ever played out. You're absolutely right. And I don't think there's an ist-or-ism that actually could encapsulate what we're about. But if you'll give me more than one word and an ist or an ism, I'll tell you what we're about. What we are about is a world that is ecologically safe. We're talking about stopping an absolutely crazy situation that we're in and turning it around.
Give me the worker thing now.
Okay, this is basic human dignity. We're talking about respect and justice. We're talking about a living wage for people. We're talking about people not being chained to sewing machines, not being exposed to toxins in the workplace.
Chained to sewing machines?
Yeah,
what
are you not familiar with with sweatshop issues around the world? Multinational corporations are literally in collusion with military juntas to enslave people. You're talking Southeast Asia.
Now, how do you achieve
Africa.
those things, though? Do you want a socialist society?
Again, the ist or ism, I can see your confusion because what's rising up in the streets is a people's movement, and you're looking for some way to put it into a box.
Movement doesn't mean anything to me or anybody watching this. It doesn't mean a thing. What a people's movement is, does everybody get paid the same? Is that what you want?
It's not. It really doesn't matter in the end whether it's the same. It's not about necessarily how much everybody gets paid. It's about everybody's life experience. You know, the United Nations has a fundamental declaration on human rights. One of the things that it talks about is, in addition to food, water, and shelter, that everybody should be entitled to freedom from fear. What a fascinating concept. We're talking about a different kind of a world. And you can shake your head and you can say that I'm being idealistic, but the fact of the matter is, there were 50,000 people, my age, older, younger, from all over the world.
There are a lot of different disenfranchised people, and there are a lot of people who hate capitalism and who hate the system, and you'll always be able to rally those people who don't like that. But unless you can articulate the message to a very, very micro level, that we want this instead of your pie in the sky stuff, I don't think you're ever going to be effective.
Well,
you'll be an outsider.
You're going to call it pie in the sky, but what I'm going to call it is what you're going to see unfolding.
We'll see.
A lot.
All right, Ms. Larry, I got to stop you because we got to take a break, and I don't want to cut you off. But you're welcome anytime to come in. We appreciate it. The Fact will be right back.